There was a time when civilians in many countries were near starvation, and during missions, soldiers don't have anything good to eat because they could not pack food. Cans of Spam was launched. It was a cheap source of protein and could be stored for years without refrigeration. Spam were a priceless godsend that saved millions of people. Spams was tasty, high-calorie and convenient, ideal for feeding American soldiers during the Second World War. No one ever thought that one day Spam would become one of the most loved meal around the world, so how this unwanted piece of meat turned into iconic American meal, let's find out. The story of Spam and Hormel Foods begins in 1860 when a child born named George A. Hormel in Buffalo, New York. When George was around 5 years old, his dad John George and mom Susanna Decker decided to move to Toledo, Ohio. Family started living with Uncle Christian Hormel and a family friend, Ferdinand Heyer. George's dad and uncle decided to open their own tannery with Ferdinand Heyer in Toledo. They named it Hormel and Heyer and made leather from sheepskins. From very early age, George started working at the tannery after school along with Ferdinand's sons. After few years of operation, the financial panic hit and business ran into trouble. When George was 12 years old, he left the school to earn some money and to support his family. After few days, he found a job in meat market where he used to trim meat, make sausage, and deliver orders. But his boss was so awful and rude that George soon quits his job. Afterward, George worked at a cargo dock, lumber yard, and railroad company before returning to his another uncle, Jacob Decker, who had a meat market in Chicago. George worked at his uncle's meat market until he was 19, since he was unhappy with his low wage of $1.25 a day. He left his job again. He knew he had to work somewhere to survive, so George started working for a hide dealer where he unloaded shipments. The work was exhausting, and he was about to quit when he was offered a job as a traveling hide buyer for the company. He moved to Des Moines, Iowa, for the job and wound up traveling all around Iowa and Minnesota. After several years, George grew tired of always moving around. He decided to open a butcher shop with Gus Wallering. Gus was his co-worker with whom he worked before. George wrote a letter to Gus. Unfortunately, Gus stand against it. With a heavy heart, George continued his job. While on a work trip in Austin, Minnesota, George met with one of his customers named Anton Friedrich, who owned a meat market. George discovered that Anton didn't want to run the business anymore. George wanted to seize the opportunity to take over. George borrowed $500 from his boss and went into business with Anton's son, Albrecht Friedrich, and together, they opened the Friedrich and Hormel meat market. Unfortunately, 4 years after founding Friedrich and Hormel, George and Albrecht decided to end their partnership. After parting ways, George used the money received to open a packing house and named the business GOA Hormel and Company. For years of meatpacking, he learned that pork had the least waste and the highest profit potential. Since each part of the pig could be used, George decided to specialize in pork packing. In his first year, George only managed to process only 610 animals, while other market-dominating companies processed about 12 million animals annually. George started focusing on quality, innovation, and cutting down on waste. Only after 2 years, another financial crisis struck and George found his company in trouble. He started thinking to sell his business, but he said to himself, "One last time." George resorted to borrowing money from a friend to open 2 more meat markets, in hopes of bringing in more sales. With help from his family and new employees, gradually he started expanding his company outside the Midwest to Minneapolis, Chicago, San Antonio, and Atlanta. George also began exporting his products to Europe. After 20 long years in business, company touched the sales in the millions. Eventually, George took a step back from handling the company and placed his son, J. Catherwood Hormel, in charge as acting president. During one of his trips to Germany, Jay connected with a meat processing plant owner, Paul Jorn. Upon meeting, Jay discovered that Paul had come up with the idea to seal entire hams in cans. Sensing an opportunity, Jay offered Paul to come to America and create a canned ham product for his father's company. After some time, Hormel and Company released America's first canned whole ham product, named Hormel Flavor Sealed Ham. The product turned out to be a huge success. At this time, George decided it was time to retire and handed ownership of the company to Jay. Under Jay's leadership, the company, later renamed Hormel Foods and launched products like spiced ham and whole chicken, company also stepped into ready-to-eat products with canned soups, stews, chile, and spaghetti and meatballs, but its most famous product was yet to come. Jay decided to develop a new product. With his father's idea, who always focused on cutting waste, he decided to use pork shoulder. The company also decided to package the meat in 12-ounce sizes, so that they would be easy to prepare at home. After hosting a contest for the best product name, someone spit out Spam word as if it were nothing at all, Hormel told Gil. "I knew then and there that the name was perfect." Product name rumored to come from either the words spiced ham or shoulder of pork and ham. Over time, Spam became very popular amongst Americans, especially for breakfast or lunch because Spam was tasty, easy to prepare and inexpensive meal sold at 29 cents a can. During the Second World War, the U.S. military shipped many canned meats, including over 100 million cans of Spam, to troops in the Pacific. Spam became first choice of troops' diet because it was filling and portable. However, the love for Spam did not last long and many soldiers grew tired of canned meat since they were eating it 3 times a day. Meanwhile, civilians also began to get bored of canned meat. Families pushed Spam from the center of a meal to a side ingredient. America started getting bored of Spam. Hormel faced an unexpected anti-Spam backlash. But in elsewhere countries, people were discovering it for the first time. As soldiers were already got bored of Spam, they start exchanging Spam for other food items like fresh eggs with civilians of each country they stationed, and meanwhile America included Spam in aid packages to Europe and Russia. During tough times, Spam's versatility and long shelf life even in the heat made it more valuable. In Guam, Japan, and Korea, civilians were near starvation due to the war and cans of Spam were a godsend help. But in Hawaii, government imposed restrictions such as banning deep-sea fishing, one of the most important sources of meat for the islands. Canned meats like Spam became a crucial source of protein. During the Korean War, Spam became even more important. Due to massive food shortages, hungry locals lined up outside American military bases. They were often given or found Spam, which was used to create a dish that evolved into a comfort food, duty jjigae, or army stew. Like in Korea, Spam was integrated into other countries' cuisines since it was often the only meat available during and post-war. In Japan, Philippines, Hong Kong and Hawaii, Spam became the main ingredient in hundreds of dishes, like onigiri rice balls, Spam silog, pandesal, stir-fries, noodles, and soups, such as the Spam and egg macaroni soup. Back at Hormel, the company revived its legacy by introducing new products: the Spam Burger, Spam Light, Spam Hot and Spicy, Spam with Bacon, Spam Teriyaki, Spam Jalapeno, and Spam Spread. Today, Spam continues to be produced by Hormel and can be found in countless grocery stores around the globe. Since their creation, over 8 million cans have been sold in 44 countries. Every year in Hawaii, a Spam festival takes place, attracting tens of thousands of people. This is how Hormel started selling Spam with the price tag of 29 cents. It's cost around $3 in America today. This is the story of Spam, which saved millions of people from starvation and leading the brand to becoming world famous and bringing in billions of dollars in sales. Did you ever eat Spam in your life? And how was it? Tell me in the comments, and if you like this story and want more stories worth sharing, subscribe this channel.